So, good evening. Thank you everybody for joining in. We have this talk with Sharmila today, titled Food and the Child. We're trying to understand what food is in terms of the child, how it is important for the child, what food does to the child. So, before we get into the talk, I'd like to introduce Aroha a little bit and then I'll introduce Sharmila as well. Aroha is a space in Chennai which works with children and adults in the Montessori way, the Montessori philosophy. We're based in Akkarai, and for the past 1 year, we've been doing a lot of online work with parents and children, hoping to set it up and open it up for parents and children from August this year. So looking forward to that. And as part of our co-learning activities, we do these talks on Instagram where we have experts talk about uh, topics and concepts related to children. Because we want our parents and educators and caregivers to understand the child a little bit more. And today's topic, food and child, has been a topic of concern for many, many of us for many years.
True.
So we have with us Sharmila Ribeiro. Thanks so much, Sharmila, for joining in today, helping us out with this talk.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's always a pleasure to talk about food and children. It's really a topic after my own heart. That's what I spent my several years writing my book about. So thank you for inviting me. Really happy to be here.
Absolutely, and thank you actually, because I mean your passion shows in the book and in whatever conversations we've had so far. It shows how passionate you are about bringing the right kind of food to children. In the process, helping parents, educators, and caregivers as well.
Yeah, absolutely. To me, it's like, it's really important. I feel that we spend so much, invest so much in our kids, especially in educating them, the best toys, the books they want, extracurricular activities. But, healthy eating is something that we really need to invest the time to teach our kids from the time they're young. Because otherwise, by the time they're our age and lifestyle diseases set in, it's sometimes too late. So It's really, I think health education needs a lot of investment and time from the parents right from a young age. So.
Absolutely. And that's something that for our viewers, Sharmila has been passionate about. And the journey with food has started long back for Sharmila. I mean, she writes about being inspired by her mom's cooking. She writes about being joyous around food and how food has helped her through the ages. And she also has a master's degree in agricultural economics. Has worked for 25 years in the rural sector, as a rural development professional. Has started her own, has founded 2 organizations in Garhwal, which deal with food and organic living and going back to basics. So her book, Everyday Love, I think you'll see a mirror version of it. But her book, Everyday Love, A Mother's Guide to Healthy Cooking,
Thank you.
Has won the best family cookbook at the World Gourmet Awards, which is brilliant. So thanks so much for putting it together for us, Sharmila, to help us out.
Thank you.
I have tried a couple of recipes from this, and they were quite a hit at home. So thank you.
Great. I'm so happy to hear that.
Yeah. Today, I know you still do a lot of work in the food sector in terms of writing articles, and you're working with children, working with adults, you're conducting workshops, and you also are contributing to schools in terms of teaching children about happy, healthy food as an elective about nutrition.
I did that. I did a course on that. Yes, it was really, I love just working with kids. To me, I think the big discovery is I never thought I would have the patience or enjoy teaching kids as much as I did. So thanks to the pandemic, in fact, because of now we're online, I actually had a lovely 5-day cooking workshop for kids where we kind of, did nutrition and cooking. So that enabled me to kind of continue that process.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And also being a Montessori parent, I think that's a connection that I think all of us have here. Even my team members, which is Sudha and Sindhu, and that Montessori connection is very clear, even in your book. in some sections of your book speak about that, how to interact with engage with the child in a very Montessori way. So being a Montessori parent also, I think, is such a
Ab-
lovely thing.
Absolutely. Yes, very true. Because Montessori actually really helped you engage, with hands-on, and that's the
Mm,
thing about food and cooking. It's also hands-on. It's also practical, and the whole Montessori approach, which they start right from the age of 2.5, which is pounding, kadala, and
exactly.
cutting, and all that is amazing because it teaches
Yeah,
kids both kind of whole all the sensorial aspects related to food right from the
absolutely.
beginning, which is just perfect. Which is just perfect.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So,
And then that love for food also begins, right? And I think,
absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely.
So growing up as adults now, but growing up, I think
Yeah,
most of us have had lovely memories around food. So food reminds
right.
us of family bonding. It reminds us of people, particular people who've actually made those recipes for us, of occasions that we looked
Yeah,
forward to when there used to be special dishes, then we would, wait for those festivals to come or those occasions to come.
true.
And we formed so many wonderful memories. So in these times when, you know, our families are still, more nuclear and there's a lot more
Hmm.
outside, there's a lot more food from outside and things like that. How do we create such memories for children? How do we create those
Yeah, that's a
opportunities?
that's a lovely question, Chidana, because I think it's much harder today to have the kind of memories about food than we had growing up. And I think the most important thing for parents to do these days, for example, in our urban environments, we're really losing that connection to nature, and especially where food is coming from. Our kids just
Mm,
see food at a supermarket, they see it in a store, or they see it delivered online, and that whole connection of where it's coming from is being lost. And so I think one of the things that I would really encourage parents to do is to create food memories related to food, how it appears in nature. So really make that
mm,
effort, whether you go home to your native place or your grandparents' house, or take them, to farm visits, or hikes in the country or whatever, right from a young age. I was fortunate because I worked with an NGO. I was able to take my kids, into the outdoors and villages right from the time they were born almost. But
mm,
I think that is one to be a very, very fundamental suggestion I would make is, make sure that kids have memories related to food, how it appears in nature.
mm,
The other thing, of course, is as which continues today, which is birthdays and festivals. And I remember for me, like right till the kids were 10 years old, they could the tradition I created around birthdays is everybody could choose their own theme birthday.
mm.
So of course, because I love to cook and it was a lot of work. It was easier to probably outsource it to McDonald's or Pizza Hut or whatever, which they really wanted to at that age. But I was like, no, 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 we're having a home party. But so, create those food memories. So each family can, create a tradition around, say, a birthday. What would you like that is special for your birthday, or special birthday cake? And for me, it was theme parties and theme games that, the kids chose. And we put an effort together, and it was so
Mm.
exciting for them. And till they were about maybe 10 years old, and after that it was it was over. Now we just have maybe a cake the special cake. The other thing, of course, is festivals. And but the thing that what again we're losing is that even nowadays towards festivals we tend to buy the food because everything is available, all the sweets and the snacks and the savories and the murkus are all available all year round, all the time.
Mm.
In fact, it's so the thing is to create hands-on memories, so involve the kids with making those sweets, making the sweets for Diwali, or we'll do a few things for Christmas or whatever. Not as much as, look, I grew up, my mother would make maybe 10, 15 different sweets, and we spent the whole month kind of preparing for it. But I think creating traditions around food for festivals, birthdays, special memories of their grandparents, visits to grandparents' houses, and memories of like tasting some food in nature. I think, that freshness of, climbing a tree or picking a mango straight from the thing. I think those are memories that we grew up with. It was natural, but maybe now we need to create it for our children, especially young children of today in this
Mm.
online kind of environment. So rather than get food delivered via Swiggy, make it, do it hands on. like things in the pandemic. One of the memories that I have and my kids will have, like we said, okay, let's make momos for the first time. Everybody made a different shape, a different size. We were on all YouTube looking at, who's going to make which type of double. It created a lot of fun and a nice memory around that. So yes, I think it's really important to use food as a tool to create these memories. It's one of the few things I think we can do with our kids these days, especially stuck at home.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that in that sense, pandemic may have been a blessing where, the family's together. So we kind of explored,
Absolutely.
explore a few things. But
Very true.
I guess
Very true.
maybe have it as a habit where, we could do like a Sunday family cook day or something like that.
Yeah, I
Sunday
know there are
brunch.
lots of actually not, or even there was a friend of mine on Facebook. She did a international food. She every month her child would pick a different country, and they would cook together and create a little meal around different countries. So one day it was Brazil and once Turkey. So they would, of course, a little older child, but research what food and the special things about from that country. And, it was really fun. And she, of course, posted and shared about it. So it's very inspiring.
That's
So,
nice. Yeah, that's lovely. So this kind of, will definitely help most of us create sort of a routine with our children to involve them and kind of build memories around it. But in general, if I may
absolutely.
ask you,
Yeah.
uh, how do we see the role of food in a child's life, in physical or mental or emotional, in that development?
Um, food is so critical. I mean, it's obviously, as you know, physically it's important. It's important for nutrition, for energy. I mean, that the basics of that we know. But the quality of food is so important in terms of, physical and mental and emotional well-being. And so therefore, the type of food we feed our kids right from a young age, really affects how they grow, how their bodies grow, and even how their minds grow. Because a lot of food that is particularly actually good for the brain. For example, things that we're becoming more and more aware of, healthy fats. So fats that are from, nuts and seeds, and all the vitamins and minerals in fruit and vegetables, the fiber and the proteins and in whole grains. So it's so important to choose the right kind of food for kids in terms of their physical and mental and emotional well-being. I mean, there are certain foods like which they say boost serotonin, and those are foods that make all of us happier. And really, those foods are not. That's not sugar. You think like, oh, sugar makes you happy, but it actually doesn't. It gives you that initial high, when kids get hyper. But the foods that actually make you, which are good for you, both emotionally and for your brain, are things like nuts and seeds and eggs and leafy vegetables, oats, coconut. Lots of things that are good for the brain are good for the body too. And so the right kind of food is important. And for kids, I mean, I keep saying this, I'm never tired of saying it. What we feed the kids, we know what to feed kids. It's literally common sense, our good healthy eating. What we don't know as much about is what's in the junk food that we're feeding them. And that is detrimental to their health. Some people tell me, oh, why, if they're kids, let them just eat. If they don't eat junk food when they're kids, when will they eat it? I said, junk food is not good at any age. And it's so important to create those, habits at a young age of not eating junk food, because it really, it basically, the junk food is a nutrient robber. So not only does not help the kids to grow because it has literally lacked nutrition, it also inhibits their body from absorbing nutrients. And the food, I mean, I used to happily buy my kids junk food, which is why I kind of got into my whole journey of my book basically came from the realization that I was buying my kids biscuits, Oreos, Tang, Choco Pies, whenever they wanted it. I did it indulgently, I did it with love, and I literally did it, for pleasure, for their pleasure, but finally for convenience. And you realize that convenience comes at a cost of their health and, other families' health. Yeah. So that's one thing I really want to share is, just to be aware that everything that we give our kids that comes really out of a package or from a supermarket a lot of that is really not good for us. And the best food for kids, physical, mental, and emotional well-being, as you said, is food that is home cooked, that is cooked with, mindfully and consciously, just using things that we know are good for us, whole grains, fruits and vegetables, good sources of protein, making sure that kids get enough protein and the vegetables and fruit in them, rather than, filling them up with snacks and, biscuits and stuff like that. So basically, I mean, junk food is quite easy to define, but I'll just, throw it out there, which is food is high in fat, high in sugar, high in salt, and high in refined flours. So the first thing, as I, advocate people do, is just learn to read food labels. If you look at a packet, like even this biscuit, like for example, you look at this digestive biscuit, which says, Nutri-Choice, high fiber. You look at the label behind it, the first ingredient is maida, the second ingredient is sugar, the third ingredient is some whole wheat, the fourth ingredient is fat. I mean, so, it's junk, essentially. And we grew up really feeling that, having a biscuit as a snack is fine, and it's really not. It's not a habit to cultivate at any age. So that's one of the important things I want to share related to, the role of food in kids' development. Good food is important, but equally or almost more important is what we should not give them, which is, junk and processed food. And by reading food labels and involving kids and reading those food labels when we take them shopping and stuff, really, really goes a long way for them to understand really what they're eating. And that they can do it even from a very young age. It's very exciting actually for kids to do that, So
to kind of see what goes
that's
into
absolutely, what are the ingredients, and you actually have to do a little math when you read food labels. So that makes it fun and exciting for kids. Adding and subtracting and
that's a lovely tip to take away, because that's another, it's huge learning for life actually, when you are able to read labels and see what goes into you, right? So then that helps you decide if you want to take it or not when you look at it.
Absolutely. And it's actually it's not difficult to do. It really takes just 30 seconds, and that will really help the parent and the child to make good food choices. And it's great to learn that from a young age.
Right. So when we're reading these labels, what are we looking at? I mean, what are we trying to see, and what would we want to avoid? I mean, you mentioned
so when you read
maida,
the food
sugar.
label, So for example, I mean, here I have a bottle of Coke. This is one of my favorite topics, food labels. The label is so tiny, the companies don't want you to even read it. So they make it very difficult to read. But the first thing is written is the ingredients. So in Coke, you'll find water and sugar essentially. And that's essentially what you're eating, is like sugar water. And then there is the nutrition thing. So you can actually see the ingredients is first, and it ranges from the biggest ingredient to the smallest ingredient. So you need, so that's clear on the ingredient label. And then you have a nutrition label, which breaks down into whether it's carbohydrates, sugar, protein, fat, salt, etc. And for example, in a Coke, the label is given for 100 ml. So in a 600 ml pack, you have to multiply. So it will be 11, for example, 11 or 12 grams. In a bottle of Sprite, I was just shocked when I first read it. A bottle of Sprite has 12 grams of sugar per 100 ml. So in those 600 bottles, which we can happily drink, or any of the kids over a course of an evening, is 72 grams of sugar. And our daily quota that the World Health Organization and Pediatric Association recommend for us and for kids is about 25 grams of sugar, or 4 or 5 teaspoons, 6 teaspoons actually. So the moment you have, one can or one bottle of sugary drink, you're way over your quota for the day. So the moment you start reading labels, you see that it becomes so apparent, you will slowly reduce, that, you have to understand the guidelines for healthy eating, which is about 6 teaspoons of sugar, about, 2-3 tablespoons of fat, 1 teaspoon of salt. And then, when you start reading labels, you start to understand what you should not eat. So,
yeah, I think that's something that I will definitely start from now on, looking at labels.
And this is, it's very, and it's prevalent in, especially these, food related to kids, cereal boxes, cereals,
Right.
most of the cereals related to kids, even which you think have no sugar, or even for adults. I mean, I have a label that I love to share on muesli. It has like sugar in about 8 different ways, and they disguise it. There are about 40, 50 names of sugar. So besides glucose, fructose, they'll have beetroot powder, apple juice concentrate, pineapple juice. They're all different names for sugar. So that's why I'm reading the labels is important. So cereals and even the energy, all these drinks which we think are good for kids, the Horlicks and the Bonvita and stuff like that. The moment you start reading labels, you realize that what is it? This? It's just flour, sugar, and milk. I mean, you can just give your kids a glass of milk with a little chocolate powder and sugar, make it at home. And it's better than having something which has, preservatives and additives, because it's all sitting on the shelf finally, for long periods of time.
Yeah.
So
The other detrimental factor, I guess, now is with children being exposed to the screen and then advertisements. So
right,
there's
absolutely.
so much of advertising that these companies do. They spend so much on advertising their product. And those are attractive. And again, like you said,
Very true.
for an adult, maybe convenient as well to kind of just go pick it up.
Yeah. So, yes, the kids really actually, that's a conversation, kids, it's very important that parents can have with their kids sitting when they go shopping, or even sitting at a dining table, or while they're watching TV or online. I mean, kids see these. It's just, showing the kids, saying, oh, look at this product. This is how they're advertising. And they're advertising it, using a famous sports person, or TV star or actor or actress. And then when you look at the label, you'll realize that the actual product is not so healthy. So just having those conversations around food actually, and what is good for health and what is not good for health, is so important. And they're fun conversations. Kids like to know these things. Kids are so curious. So if you engage them in these conversations of, do you think this is healthy? Why do you think this is good for you? I think it's a wonderful thing to do with kids right from a young age.
A very young age, absolutely. And that's such bonding time as well, to learn about food and sit and think about
very absolutely.
So looking at what to avoid is very important.
Yeah.
But there's also this entire sector about superfoods, which you also talk about in your book. So could you help us understand superfoods a bit?
See, because it's really food that's everyday food. It's food that we eat on a regular basis, but it has there are foods that have an extra amount, or maybe a added amount of, especially vitamins and minerals basically in it, and phytochemicals. So foods that are high in vitamin C, foods that are high, all these, when they tell you to eat a rainbow, that's one of the things we encourage kids to do, eat a rainbow, or encourage all of us. And those foods, each of them have a phytochemical in it, red, which is in tomatoes, and the blue in blueberries and beetroot, and the orange and yellow vegetables, which have beta carotene. So each of these represent a different kind of food that helps us fight immunity. It helps, they say anti-cancer. So those are superfoods. But especially in India, I think, there are everyday foods, especially our local seasonal foods. They're all superfoods, It's when you look internationally, a lot of our gourds, our greens, our keere, drumstick, amla, these are all superfoods. All our millets are superfoods. All the spices we use are superfoods. So I think if you're eating a traditional Indian diet, especially what our grandmothers or mothers ate, and you're feeding that to your kid, I think they're getting plenty of superfoods. And if they have, of course, certain deficiencies, of you need to build immunity, then of course, you can give them more. Like I learned that, we grew up thinking, okay, oranges are very good in vitamin C, but guava has 5 times more vitamin C than an orange, And that's not hailed as much. Of course, amla has 20 times more. But so these are, guavas which are totally local and available, very reasonably priced. They don't come from New Zealand or Australia or anything. Much better to have than an orange or an apple, honestly. So, so that's, superfoods are, they're good for you, but I think I think one suggestion I would have is to move away from for the whole grains, we tend to have white rice, which is easier to eat, and maida foods and stuff like that. So introduce red rice, which has higher fiber and vitamins and protein. The millets. So kids can be introduced to these from a young age. Like my kids were very happy to eat red rice. I mean, I realized that the barrier was me, not them. The moment I fed them, it was like, oh, this is very tasty, So, I think introducing kids to whole grains and at least making sure that, everything you do is a half and half, even if you don't want. So when they cook, when you start cooking with kids, introduce them to that kind of foods right from a young age.
That's so it's actually, if you want to go forward into healthy eating, we actually need to go back to our basics. So that's
absolutely, yeah. Like when I make idlis and dosas, it's always 50, half and half. I do half red rice, half white idli rice. And that balances it's actually much tastier. You still get crispy dosas and so much better for you, So,
so it is, I think, the initial hard work, but once you get there, I guess it's smooth sailing. And so
absolutely, there is a little bit of extra effort, of building variety into your diet. That's building variety through introducing, different types of, rather than just having, one or two different dals. You bring that variety through different beans or different dals or different types of rices and millets. I mean, it takes some effort or planning, but once you're used to it, and you plan for these various superfoods, as we call them, I think they're really wonderful, and they really, really help with your food. In fact, the reason I'm passionate about talking about healthy cooking is because the effect on my own kids' health and that of mine was so dramatic. All my kids had asthma and allergies, and honestly, the only one thing I did was to cut the junk food and start cooking from scratch. As you saw, my book has 170 recipes for breakfast, lunch, school snacks, after school, all of that, and that's the only step I took. And then the health of the whole family improved so much that my pediatrician used to say, oh, what, you're not bringing your kids to me anymore. And it was dramatic that food really, they say food is medicine, medicine is food. It's really, really true, to prevent disease.
Yeah, that's great. And I think, since you mentioned earlier about involving children in cooking as well. So, in the planning and maybe going and buying things and then coming together and putting it together. How can one involve children in cooking?
I think, as the first thing, what I love about Montessori is it involves kids right from the young age, from those, the two aspects of Montessori, sensorial and the exercises of practical life. And I think so, for Montessori parents, that's happening already, but for people who are not into, Montessori schools, just involving kids with simple, non-harmful activities in the kitchen. I think that's the first one great thing. Like, as you said, pounding, cutting something with a blunt knife, kneading, dough, making, even bread making is so sensorial actually for any age. So involving kids in that age, as I said, involving them in taking them out to nature so they understand food. When you go shopping, it's identifying. There's so much of learning when you go shopping with a young kid. What is this vegetable? What does it do? Why is it good for you? Giving them the names in different languages. So what is this called in Tamil, in English, in Hindi? There's just so much of fun activities you can do through food.
Absolutely.
And so that's for very young kids. As kids get older, you can actually involve them in simple cooking. Baking is actually very safe. It's a very safe way for kids to learn to cook and be independent. And one thing about cooking, it brings huge amount of independence in kids. You have no idea how they feel when they've actually been able to make something for the first time. It's really exciting. It builds a lot of high degree of independence, and it's a life skill. So, never too young to start. And so grocery shopping, and then helping with, serving the food, laying the table, having family meal time is a very important, I think, part of getting children, to sit down at a meal time and have a meal together. I know in our lives these days, it's very difficult to get because everybody is doing different things. As you said, the pandemic, of course, was good because everybody was at home. But whether everybody is at home eating a meal together, we don't know. Most often, we're all on our different devices and
Absolutely,
maybe
yeah.
not spending that time together. So making that, at least for one family meal a day, I think is a very, very important thing for kids. And so, as I said, involving them in understanding about food, cutting and chopping, and from a young age. And then as they get older, simple skills in that 6 to 9 age group. And then from 9 or 10 onwards, actually, kids can independently cook. And what I'd like to advocate is that please don't let them make only cookies and cake and pizzas, because when kids learn to cook, and you have these, when people are having workshops, they're only teaching cookies, cake, and pizza. There's a lot more food than just sweet, sugary food, because that's reinforcing. You realize that's reinforcing those same things of sugary food to kids. And it's wonderful. It's fine that they learn to make bread, or they can learn to make non-savory, non-sweet food. So savory food would be absolutely fine. Healthy pizzas can be quite healthy if you don't put too much of cheese and oil or whatever into them. So layer them with vegetables. So yeah, food is a great way to bond with kids.
Absolutely.
It creates great connection. Yeah.
And there's so much learning, like you mentioned just now, in those different areas of development in the Montessori sector as well. There's exercise of practical, right? So there's fine motor, large motor, sensorial.
Absolutely.
There's when they're baking,
even
then there's
math, actually.
Yeah.
Math, like for example, in this food labels, there's math, because you said, you have 100 ml, the label is written in 100 ml, and then the bottle is 600 ml.
600.
So they actually have to multiply. So there's math also involved. And in all cooking, if you're looking at measuring, cup measures, spoon measures, there's, that sense of proportion. It's really, it's completely all-round education, actually. Because it's thinking, it's not blind. You actually have to think. And language, yes, very much.
So we had one of our speakers who spoke about how children would develop language was when the mother would carry the child at the hip and take the child to a market. And like you said, talk to the child about the vegetables and talk to the grocer. And the child is looking at the grocer and the mother, and picking up so much language. Yeah. So there's so much happening.
Picking up, yeah.
And intangible as well, like you said, one of the things is independence. But apart from that, there's organizing, there's sharing, there's looking at the other as well. See, okay, how much should I make and how much should I share?
Quantities. There's so many learnings.
Really wonderful.
But as parents, I said, we need to pick the time. I think the hard thing is to create that time, because cooking can be messy. Cooking takes time. It's not, unless it's that's why we go for convenience food. We, quickly dial up or Swiggy and get things delivered. But I think, planning for it, and even once a week, just a few hours with your kids on, making something fun or healthy is really will go a long way.
Absolutely. And I think that also brings on a respect for food. So you're not, when you're involved in cooking, you don't waste also.
Yeah.
One wonderful
when on this topic of waste, I must share that this involvement with food. So my kids all went to Abacus Montessori School, and they later on, for the younger kids, they started a farm school. And where the kids were taken out to the farm, every week, and they grew their own rice, they planted it, they harvested it, they did all the hard work involved in planting of rice. And one of the learnings, I listened to a presentation by one of these, the group of the kids, who they said, they learned not to waste food, because once they had actually involved in transplanting rice, waiting for it to grow, harvesting it, picking it, they realized that, oh my God, it's so much of work. It was months of work. So it took their appreciation of food and the fact that they should not waste it to a completely different level. So that's one of the things that you can actually really, kids will benefit from understanding. When they work with food, you'll understand that you don't waste it, and that all aspects of the food can be used, and you can show them that.
Right. And that's
my kids.
Yeah. Go ahead.
one example from the pandemic, because we were all at home and really conscious about using everything that we had, especially in the lockdown, because everything was in creative. I was making all kinds of things out of watermelon rind, and it was a discovery. And it's like, you don't waste anything, of food. So it's a family joke, but it was also one of my favorite no waste meals.
Lovely.
So,
That's great. I guess that's also a life skill that you're giving your children, that not just to be independent and learn for themselves and take care of themselves. It's also a healthy lifestyle for their lives, right? So now from start young,
absolutely.
then they are in
Yeah,
the right
simple
way.
things. Yeah.
Hmm.
Carry a shopping bag. May always say no to plastic. That's an important thing that kids just need to hear from you. When you go shopping, you have to set an example. Actually,
Model
finally,
it.
kids, we may say things. We may say all kinds of things. The kids watch what we do, what we say, and also what we do. So, just setting that example where food is concerned, I think is very, very important. Because if we, say that, oh, I'm not, I can eat a biscuit, but you can't eat it, or I can eat that chocolate, but you can't eat that, doesn't fly. You have to set that example, So,
Absolutely. So there's so much more to food than just the memories that we started off with, right? So I think thanks,
yeah,
Sharmila, for
yeah,
showing.
very much.
Yeah. So it's not just about creating those memories, those family bonds, but there's so much learning as well in
Yeah.
food. So thanks a lot, Sharmila. Thanks so much for sharing all this with us. We'll
Yeah.
open it up for questions, maybe.
Sure, absolutely. I
So
think that's the most
yeah,
important part
exactly.
of these discussions.
Yeah. So we do have parents who have been asking us, is my child getting enough, or am I giving the right kind of food? So there's all this has been a concern for many of us, I think, over time.
Mhm.
So we'll open it up for questions now. So if you have any questions, please leave them in the question box below, and we'll continue
Yeah,
our
I think the
conversation.
comments are off, at least the
Yeah.
comments are off for me, but
Yeah, they're off. Should I turn them on? Maybe we can see the questions there as well. Let me turn
I
them
mean, or you can ask me the questions if you'll.
Yeah, turn the comments on. Or if anybody has any specific question and you'd like to leave it in the question box, I can read it out to Sharmila. So yeah, so this is really bringing the everyday love into our lives, Sharmila, with food, with so much
Thank
learning.
you.
So yeah, thanks so much. And you must maybe perhaps just give us a little gist of how you got to write this book. I've read it, but for the audience who has.
It was actually my own family's journey of to healthy eating, where I realized my youngest, he was just not eating any fruits and vegetables, and was getting sick all the time. And I was a very busy working mom, traveling all the time, and really not paying attention to what the kids were eating, especially with their school lunch boxes. I would just do whatever was the easiest, uh, basic sandwiches on white bread and things. And when I started to then say, okay, now why is this, he's not eating fruits and vegetables. And I knew enough to know that, force feeding the kids are not going to work. And
Right.
I knew I needed to be patient. So given that, then I started to see like, okay, what would be the best way to feed him a healthy diet? And that's began my journey. So I started to do, reading about nutrition, what was good to eat, and then of course what was not good to eat, which was to me the biggest learning, what was all in our junk food and stuff. And then I just started to see, okay, how can I give him fruits and vegetables in new and interesting ways,
Right.
and making healthy tasty. I think so to me that has been the biggest challenge, or my kind of mission, is how can healthy food, which generally has a connotation of not being tasty, be made tasty. And
Right.
so using so I would introduce pumpkin by putting it into a whole wheat pumpkin muffin, or an apple muffin, or a banana bread, or beetroot in a cutlet, or just introduce foods in ways. And once they've had it, sometimes you trick them, but once they've had them, then they realize, oh, actually I can eat this. So
Right.
that was my journey. And the other thing is to realize that a lot of people say, oh God, your child is fussy, won't eat this fruit, won't eat this vegetable. I tell most parents and people I talk to, I said, we should not try not to label your child as a fussy eater. Just think about them as a child whose preferences we have not yet discovered, because we ourselves have so many likes and dislikes related to food. So, but we expect our kids to eat whatever we want them to eat and how much we want them to eat. So I think the one big message I have is that, we really need to respect kids in terms of their what they want to eat. Yeah, respect their autonomy, their desire for independence related to food, because you realize that growing age is all about independence, right from the time they can crawl, walk, and touch and discover. It's all about, so respecting that, respecting them related to food, I think is also very important, because there's a woman called Ellen Slater who writes very effectively. It says, parents can decide what the kids eat and when they eat, but the children should decide how much to eat and whether they want to eat that. So if you're looking at divided responsibilities, I think that's a very beautiful way of putting it, because food is meeting their needs. It's a hunger. Kids have to learn to sense their hunger, and it's meeting their needs, not ours. So I think giving them those messages and just being very patient, especially in younger years, it can be a huge challenge for especially parents who are working and who are busy and rushed. It really can be a big challenge. But showing patience and not force feeding and making that connection through food, through meal times, through doing things with food, and giving them that autonomy and saying, okay, this is what I want you to eat, but you decide how much you want to eat. And sometimes, we'll have to, be, they may eat 2-3 mouthfuls and kind of just, spit it out. But we'll have to, try and be patient. Sometimes it takes 7 to 12 times for kids to try a new food.
Right.
And that is our challenge. And if they don't like it in a certain way, you make it in another way. So that's how I discovered, like, for example, my kids will not eat, bengan katrika in a certain way. I started making it in a Mediterranean dip. And when I roasted it and put it in a pureed, they happily ate it. So sometimes, we need to put in that effort of, to feed them in a different way. Yeah, make it interesting and making it tasty,
Right.
It doesn't have to always look interesting. I think a lot of people, have that thing of making shapes and colors, and that can be fun, maybe, to introduce a new food or get kids to try it. But finally, I think it's about taste and flavor. So.
No, I really like how you put that, not to label the child and say, he or she is a fussy eater, but to see for ourselves that we haven't discovered what the child actually wants to eat. So that's really nice.
Yeah.
I think that's something that we need to introspect and see. Right?
Yeah, I mean, even examples of, how if we go to somebody's house and we said, oh, we've had enough, and somebody will come and put some more food into your plate. And that is like, oh God, I'm full. I really don't want to eat. But we do the same for our kids, or eat a little more, or, give them a pre-designed portion that we insist that they eat. And now you sit and finish all of it. Yeah. And that's when food becomes a battle, when it becomes a source of stress. So...
Yeah, you also write about, I mean, on this note, you also write about rewards and punishments, which is again a very Montessori thing, where you say don't use food for either rewards or for punishment.
Yeah, that is because that's very often, I mean, our classic rewards and punishment will be like, eat your vegetables and only then I'll give you the dessert or the sweet. And that completely sends a wrong message related to vegetables, right? So using food as a bargaining tool, we have this classic eat 1 spoon for the crow and 1 for Amma and 1 for Appa, and, running after the child, feeding, a lot of things in our Indian traditions, which are really not good, food practices in the long run for kids.
Right.
Because they don't start to kind of just focus on the food. And again, distracting kids and saying, okay, well, put the kid in front of the TV and let them eat. Yeah, that's another, I mean, I've also done it when I was kind of desperate or very busy. But ideally, that's really not a great way for kids to engage with food. It's better for to sit with the child and chat with them, or give them, time and attention, not through feeding them, but spending the time with them, while they're eating. So eating together.
On that note, there's a question from Deepa, who's asking us, how can we engage a toddler child? I'm guessing with...
with food, related to food. I think, when Montessori examples are classic of simple things that a child can do related to food, and pounding, cutting, touching and learning about vegetables, but also eating, with food. Sometimes children's self-feeding can be very messy, but it's, we have to ideally be patient and let them mess themselves up, because it's very sensorial. When they touch, they eat, they smell, that all adds to the sensorial things. Maybe you have some examples from Montessori.
Yeah, in fact, there are, if you Google
For a
on
toddler.
YouTube, the toddlers program, for in the Montessori programs for toddlers, you will see toddlers actually making a meal for themselves. It could be a sandwich. It could be a simple thing as,
Yeah,
using a blunt knife to cut off the sides of the bread,
yeah, yeah,
or,
yeah,
taking a
yeah,
knife to just to put that jam or a peanut butter or something on it. Or,
yeah,
even cutting up a carrot and eating that as a snack, or cucumber or carrot,
yeah.
just cutting activities. So a toddler can be actually quite effectively engaged with food
Hmm.
related activities.
Yeah.
So that's
It's all about actually that kids love to be independent and have autonomy, or like
absolutely.
ownership of their own, what they
Yeah,
can do. So I think
yeah.
it's just our ability to trust them. As I said, that trust is so important at all levels. I mean, even with teenage kids now, building trust and communication, and that can start very early by us trusting them to feed themselves, trusting them to use, a kitchen implement that will not harm them, and just being patient. So, trust and respecting their food choices. I think that would be very important when we engage them with food.
Right. I guess even just having the toddler with you in the kitchen as you are cooking and maybe narrating what you're doing, your actions
Yeah,
and your,
yeah, yeah,
what you're
yeah.
actually going through, what you're going to
Yeah.
make, and even that would be a very nice way to engage them.
That creates interest in food. That creates
Absolutely.
interest in food. So that when we find kids are disinterested or disengaged in food, I think the whole thing is to how do we, not sit and feed them, but make the connection to them through food in a different way. You know,
Hmm.
um, so because children sometimes want our attention, and then they will make us, feed them, or, be difficult at the table. Sometimes these are, attention, but if our connection with the kid is there through some other activities, meal times can be actually quite fun.
Right.
Are there any other questions?
Uh,
And the thing about, to me, it's when healthy eating is that you have to model it. You stock up on healthy snacks. One of the things I write about in my book, I have that whole section on fussy eat, on how to make kids eat healthy, is, you can talk to kids, especially young kids, about this is a anytime food, and this is a sometimes food. So like, not deprive them completely of junk food or treats, but say this is a sometimes food. So, fruits or whatever you can have anytime, but this is a sometimes food. So, maybe making those distinctions for kids, that's one thing. And what I like to, share with parents, especially of young children, is meal planning. Just preparing. One of the biggest stress buster that I found as a busy working parent was to plan a weekly meal plan. And I would just sit down on the weekend and just plan for, Monday to Sunday, and what I wanted for breakfast, lunch, dinners, maybe after school snacks, and then dinner. And it was a huge stress buster in terms of feeding the family, because I think that's a daily grind for all of us. What do we make for lunch, dinner, at any age and any stage in our lives? So, weekly meal planning, and then you can reuse the meal plans, investing that little time. That's a big way to help. And kids can be involved in planning, especially if your kids are not very happy eating this or that. You can ask them, say, okay, what would you like to eat? You put down what you would like to eat. What would you like for for your school snack on this day? Or once a day we can have a junk food, treat. That one day would be a, fast food or something, a homemade one. But so you can involve children in meal planning, and then they can, talk about their preferences. So that would be one tool. And then on the weekends, parents, instead of buying convenience food or processed food, you can make things on the weekend and store them in your fridge, freezer. And that's really a huge, big step to healthy eating, because then you always have something that you can, healthy, you can feed my kids.
Right.
I make hummus once a week. I freeze half. I have half in the fridge. It's a very easy food for toddlers of any age, or any of us at any age. Similarly, you can, freeze bananas and use them in smoothies and banana bread and muffins or pancakes. There are lots of things you can freeze to have access to healthy food all the time. And so that to me would be one of the easy steps to healthy eating for parents in today's world.
Right.
And that's
Just
what I
that
kind of shared in my Everyday Love book. So
yeah, like it's just that bit of work, and then everything is smooth sailing.
yeah, it is an effort. I think especially which was because we've gone used to convenience foods and it's so easy to access. Healthy eating requires actually a little more effort these days, but it actually tastes better once you start cooking from scratch and stocking up on healthy food. You really would not want to buy store-bought biscuits and bakery stuff and all of that. It's really home cookers definitely taste better, and the kids will realize that over time. I mean, my kids don't ask me to go to fast food restaurants anymore. They may want fine dining, but they definitely don't want to go to McDonald's and Pizza Hut anymore. So their
That's
taste
great.
buds change and they appreciate. Yeah. So
This is lovely to get your children to engage with. There's so much that, again, ideas for toddlers is just to feel the vegetables, feel the fruits, which you have in your kitchen, and sorting them out visually, sorting them out sensorially. So there's so much to do, there's so much learning. It's amazing.
yeah, there is learning at every stage. I mean, it can be and now actually engaging with food is it can be a very, very successful profession also at earlier age, and it engages all senses, because it's from creativity. It's a very creative process and builds skills and motor skills and independence, and it can be a great profession. So I think again, in this pandemic, it shows that so many people, home chefs, women and men sitting at home have found a source of income through supplying food, and good food, home cooked food. So I think food is a topic that can engage everyone in the family, from the toddlers to the grandparents,
Absolutely.
anytime and all the time. So
I guess,
it can
the
become an obsession, like
fundamental
it has.
need that becomes an obsession. Yes, exactly. So,
Absolutely.
yeah,
So,
I think even
and
get-togethers, it's always about food. What are we going to eat? What are we going to make? And, it's always about
very true, very true. And that's what makes it special, actually, really. Food brings a lot of pleasure, but the wrong kind of food, it maybe brings temporary pleasure, but in the long run, it's so detrimental to our health. In fact, when I give these talks on healthy eating, I always say, especially in terms of the pandemic, the talk I'm giving it is how to prevent comorbidities, because all the diseases that were most prevalent in COVID-19 were lifestyle diseases. And if you start at a young age, basically teaching kids, how to cut sugar, how to cut fat, how to cut salt in their diet, it really will help them in the long run. And we need those learnings even at our age. So, healthy eating is basically, it's giving your kids a gift for life, teaching them to cook for themselves and teaching them to eat healthy from a young age is, it's a gift. It's a gift that you're giving them for their future.
Absolutely.
So
That's great. We are almost on time, and I don't see any questions here. If anybody has any, could you please put them down?
yeah, I think we covered a lot of topics. So
We did actually, yeah. Like you said, it's a never-ending
everything
topic.
related to.
Yeah.
Anyway, I hope that people listen to this and continue the journey. And really, as you said, everyday love is putting in that effort to feed your family a healthy meal, that extra time and effort. And over time, once you've got the few basic steps of, as I say, understanding good nutrition and what are the guidelines for healthy eating, what not to eat, like which is in terms of junk food, reading food labels and stocking up on healthy snacks and food, and eating mindfully. I think, it's a simple, few step by step process, and it sets you on the road for. And the other point I'd like to make to is that when you cook for yourself at home, it's not only good for you, but it's also good for the environment, because all our processed food comes with so many layers of packaging, right? So the moment you start making, for example, your own peanut butter, that's similar. You're just saving boxes and boxes of plastic jars and plastic packets that would actually come into your house or that you discard. So, it's not only good, healthy eating and home cooking is not only good for you, but it's also good for the environment. So that's a message I'd like to leave people with as we conclude the talk.
Thank you, Sharmila. Thank you so much for helping us understand how to bring back this love for ourselves, our families, our children, and the earth. So thank you for helping us understand everyday love and food. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing this for us.
Yeah. Thank you. It was a real pleasure, and have a lovely weekend.
Thank you.
Everyone.
And you have a great party with your son.
Thank you. I know, as I said, special birthday food being made today. So
Have fun.
yeah.
Thanks everyone
Thank
for
you.
joining us.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Okay. Bye.
Bye.